folks. Welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Wednesday, April the 3rd, 2019. And it is a great honor for me to speak with our next guest. He's new to the show, and he is directly responsible for building two highly successful exploration mining companies, one of which brought the equivalent of a 50 million ounce gold mine to market. And needless to say, this has generated vast amounts of wealth for a great many people. Mr. Bebek is on the cusp of potentially repeating this incredible success. And you can find out a lot more about Mr. Ivan Bebek at orenresources.com. And they're listed on the TSX and the New York Stock Exchange American under the symbol AUG. And his current bio is right there on the screen. And I'd like to welcome to the Daily Coin, Executive Chairman and Director of Oren Resources, Ivan Bebek. Ivan, welcome to the Daily Coin.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really glad that you're here. And like I said, you are responsible for finding this just gargantuan mine that was involved, that has a combination of copper and gold. And it's the equivalent of about a 50 million ounce gold project. And tell us a little bit about that. And more importantly, how did it feel when you began pulling these vast amounts of gold out of the ground?
All right. Well, thanks very much for the introduction. And you're right. It's my group and myself, we've been through a couple great successes, and I have to give just a bit of background real short. We found a 5 million ounce gold mine in Ghana, West Africa, which was our first company back in 2005. Company went from 49 cents to $9 per share, which was a great return while finding that gold mine. And, you know, every ambition of an executive that does what I do, or my partner Sean and myself do, and our team, is to sell things that you find so you can monetize that event for shareholders. That first company, we actually built a 10 million ounce gold mine that's producing today in Africa. We went out to go try it again, and we were in Mexico with our last company, Caden, where we drilled 100 holes, and we thought we were on to finding another gold mine, and we sold the company for $205 million. If you own shares in Caden, a year before we bought it, it went from 67 cents a share to $3.50 per share. And then if you own shares once it was bought out by Agnico for $205 million, they doubled in about 14 months after that time. So another 10 bagger, a 20 bagger, the first company, a 10 bagger in the second company. And still, we hadn't found a big enough deposit yet, you know, and the more you find, the more luck you have. There's a few things that happen. You hire better geologists, or you look for better ones to build on the team. We've hired Newmont's former global exploration team, a lot of incredible geologists there. And then we went out to go find some of the biggest mines in the world, which I'll touch on, the 50 million ounce kind of equivalent swing we're taking with Sombrero down in Peru. What we've identified in Peru is a big copper gold system. And so far, we've just been working on the surface. It's never actually been drilled before. But with these smart geoscientists from these major mining companies that work with us, they've quickly found all the same features of this area as there is of a mine next door called Las Bambas. Las Bambas is about, you know, in numbers factor, it's 1.7 billion tons of copper, equivalent of 0.6% copper. That would be the same as a 50 million ounce gold deposit today. I mean, anybody who has an iPhone, a computer, or believes in climate change and everything else is going to believe in copper, or any kind of reurbanization of the globe, which we're seeing. So copper is one of the most valuable commodities, I think, going forward, alongside gold and silver and some of the other precious metals. It's kind of the precious metal of the industrial metals, right? Because its uses and demand is so big. So what Las Bambas has in common is scale to Sombrero, but Sombrero as a target, we're going to drill this for the first time ever in August of this year. And this is the exciting part, being able to say we're going to take a swing on a deposit that could be 50 million ounces big, having enough evidence so far on surface to even make that statement with a straight face and a good reputation or an excellent reputation in the business is where it all starts. And now for investors, you got to think about what kind of value we can attribute to our share price if we are successful in doing that. And the only thing I'm going to say about these kind of systems, it's copper and gold. You know, there will be a big gold component. You know, in a trench we did, there was 0.15 grams per ton gold, which a lot would say, hey, Ivan, that's really low grade gold. but 1 billion tons of that is 20, 30 million ounces of gold. It's substantial, and it would be mineable in an environment if it had good infrastructure, which we do have. But what we're chasing here truly is a $60 billion discovery. We've attracted all the majors around the world, not just gold companies, but gold and copper companies are paying attention. They've either come, some of them have come to see the project. Other ones are looking to come to see the project because it does have hallmarks of a big discovery.
And speaking of which, are you attracting eyeballs from China? I mean, as most people know, they have this massive Belt and Road Initiative, which is global in scope, and it's 11 times larger than the Marshall Plan. I mean, and they're buying mines outright all over the world. And are you seeing, is China, are they showing interest? And what type of impact do you see this their large scale project, this Belt and Road Initiative? What do you see that happening? What impact do you see that having on the mining industry as a whole? And you mentioned copper; they're going to need tons and tons, endless tons of copper. And I would imagine that what you have going on with Sombrero would be of great interest to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and I'll start with this. Las Bambas, the mine we're comparing the shot of what we might find to, was bought by MMG, a Chinese national mining company, for $8 billion in 2014. At current market cap and share price, that would be $80 a share of Oren. But that included capex, so the actual mine value was about $6 billion, which still could be like a $60 billion Oren if we didn't have much more dilution and we could find that kind of a deposit, right? So that's kind of the real arm wave, the big swing of what we're going for. We've heard from quite a few Pacific Rim Asian countries, not just China. We've heard from major national mining companies in Japan as well. And again, we've attracted the top 10 mining companies globally on the planet, and they've all expressed interest. So Asian, North American, Australian, they're all paying attention. And you kind of have to when you're kind of looking at finding this kind of a sizable deposit.
Right.
Second point I'll make about China, which I'm glad you've touched on, and we've done business in Africa. We're obviously doing business in Peru. What China's done a really good job of, they hold a lot of US dollars, as you and I were all aware of. They buy a lot of US debt. But they've gone to the Congo, they've gone through a lot of Africa, and they built infrastructure, multi-billion-dollar, $4 to $5 billion superhighways and road accesses to all these major mines. And they've been improving infrastructure in Africa as well as South America at zero cost to the country. And they're doing it in exchange for having a first right of being able to buy the metals such as copper coming out of those countries, right? Which is a pretty brilliant way to go spend your huge amount of US dollars. You pay for infrastructure that will give you a first right on copper. Now, in the copper world, we're at a 5-year low inventories in metals. If you look at any kind of, you can just Google copper inventories, we're in the 5-year lows. There's no major mines scheduled to come online in the next 3 years. And that leaves a big gap and creates a supply and demand equation. So yes, there's a lot of talks with China. There's talks of the US possibly going into recession, global slowdown, but there's also global expansion and reurbanization, which you've touched on. Even if we see a global slowdown on everything, there's still not enough copper in inventories to supply the steady demand that would carry through a recession, because there will be no new major supplies coming on board. So copper prices are going to perform quite substantially. We think in the next 1 to 2 years, you'll see a really good move in copper. Secondly, to be immune of recessions in an industrial metal like copper because of low inventories, that protects the downside of a copper price as well. And thirdly, recently traveling through New York, one of the financial centers of the world, we got a chance to go visit gold funds, generalist funds, and copper funds. So we saw both precious metals and base metals. I would argue that the interest in the base metal investing was parallel or possibly even more than gold right now. And there's a lot of gold bugs coming back to the space because of the reasons I just mentioned. So tremendous impact. I think, the reurbanization, think of your own town where you live. Look at how many houses are being renovated in your neighborhood. Everywhere I go, I see cranes, I see houses being renovated. We're at that kind of 40-year, renovation of everything. And the world has gotten a lot bigger. We've gone from 4 to 7.5 billion people. There's a comment made to me by a fund manager out of Boston saying, Ivan, if you actually put the whole global, world of driving cars into electric cars, just 3% of the world drove electric cars. there's no more copper left in the mines on the planet. And that's how impactful the demand is going to be going forward as we move to a more modern reurbanization of society.
That's an amazing statement that you just made, that as far as if we move from, petro to electric vehicles, that copper would disappear, the current inventory. That's amazing. And as far as the lows that we're experiencing right now, Ivan, didn't China have to throw out a whole bunch of copper ore and zinc ore that had gotten ruined somehow? And is that plays a role as well, right?
Yeah, I think that with China and the copper and zinc and the mining they do within that country, having some experience, having been there and looked at a tin mine at one time in my career, their standards globally are not as stringent as our standards are. They are now getting there today, but they weren't in the past, whether it's coal, copper, zinc mining. And so, that's a country with 1.5 billion people. It's tough to govern and manage, and you're going to run into some issues like they had, which will put a crunch on copper supply, which is obviously good for copper price. But
Right.
I think going forward, they have a pretty good handle on rare earth elements. That they're probably
Yep.
the leaders that way. I think copper being such a hugely needed commodity for them, there's certainly going to be a real good global competition for high grade, high quality copper mines for the next 20, 30, 50 years. And I think they're going to be leading that charge substantially, whether they have inventory issues or not along the way. That demand is not going to go away. It hasn't slowed down much since it started in the last decade of reurbanization, right?
And if that copper mine just happens to have quite a substantial amount of gold in it, all the better for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the mine next door, Las Bambas, is copper and molybdenum, right? Molybdenum trades, I think, about $14 a pound or $12 a pound, and gold trades, at 1,300 an ounce, roughly. I mean, gold is a favored commodity when you're thinking of value of a massive copper deposit. If you're going to have a sister commodity in the mix, you want it to be gold for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And with it seems, Ivan, that you have the ability to raise capital in a market that is absolutely starved for capital inflows. I mean, uh, anybody that's been paying attention knows that the mining industry for the past 10 years has been suffering from a lack of capital. And part of me says that your success is based on your track record. I mean, you have an unbelievable track record. But the bigger part of me says that you have done that this has to do with you and the team of people you surround yourself with. I mean, how do you explain such tremendous success?
Sure. It's interesting, and I'm glad you touched on this topic. We raised $5.2 million about 2 weeks ago, and we were offered a lot more money from the market. And the money is being offered because of the opportunity at Sombrero. There's no question it's a big one, and it has some real obvious indications that it could really come together for us. We elected to do a smaller financing, and an interview I did with somebody else, they balked at me saying 5 million was small in this market, but to us it is. And $1 million of that was purchased by insiders, which is the largest individual purchase by insiders in our company. And why we did this financing this way versus going to market and taking 20 or 30 million that we could have probably raised, which would have been a healthy financing, is we're about to go drilling. We believe the risk of getting there is extremely low, and we believe the reward would be much higher. We're really anti-dilutive. If you followed Oren for the last 3 years, you would follow my inside purchases. And I don't like talking about myself, but I do like making this statement. I bought about $3.4 million worth of shares, predominantly out of the open market. That's been agreed driven purchase. I bought it as high as $3 US. I bought it at $2 US, as low as 85-90 cents US. We trade around $1.50 US today. What we have in front of us, not just as assets, but as a team, is we've assembled one of the premier exploration teams on the globe that are going to go and find, I believe, some of the world's biggest deposits in the new market we're in, which is a lot harder than it's been for 20 years because all the easy stuff has been picked, right?
Right.
So back to your financing comment, the last decade, it's been tough. It's been very tough, even for guys like us that have an incredible following. We've made investors a lot of money. We have raised about $100 million in the last 4 years, and I'd put that in the top 1% of exploration companies doing what we're doing. 40 million or 38 million roughly came from Gold Corp for our Committee Bay project and the gold portion of our portfolio. This was the largest investment by a major mining company into a junior done, as far as we know, in the last 2 decades. That's the kind of attention we're drawing. It's been driven by our technical team as well as the assets we've acquired. We have 7 projects, so there's a lot of room. 2 big flagships, Sombrero in Peru, which is copper and gold, and Committee Bay, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment,
Yep.
which is one of the biggest gold swings I'm aware of on the globe right now. And not easy, but it does have the real estate to deliver multiple massive gold deposits going forward.
Now, with Barrick, they've been making a lot of noise recently, as I'm sure you're well aware, with their takeover bid of Rand, and then their recent attempt to take over Newmont. And Newmont actually said that it looked desperate to them. I mean, what does the future look like for these massive mining companies in comparison to a company like Orin Resources?
Well, I think, before you see a market turn either towards a bull market or at the peak of a bull market, whenever you see a big market turn, you see consolidation. Companies, generally the big majors, will merge and mid-tiers will merge. They'll start merging with each other, consolidating before a big move in the gold space. And I think that's what you saw here with Barrick, Newmont, and Randgold. There was a big push. Barrick is trying to become the biggest. Newmont is the biggest. If the deal goes through with Gold Corp this week on the 4th, I believe tomorrow is going to be the actual date of the vote. And so he who's the biggest in the industry tends to have a bit of a control and can outbid other people on big gold finds going forward, and they can have the most impact on the gold commodity price and production as well. But it's certainly a move that's indicating a bigger move ahead in gold. I think George Soros bought $800+ million worth of gold the other day as well. The first time a big gold purchase by him since him selling when Trump won the election. So these are the kind of things we look for as a group, as macro indicators that we could be at the start of a major bull market gold cycle. So tremendously positive. And what it means for Orin and what we do and what we're doing, all it means, in a real simple sense, is the market that's been really tough for so long is going to get a lot better. People are going to start speculating again on major gold deposits because it likely means a lot better gold prices in the days ahead. So you can take the gold discovery that we might make at Committee Bay or the gold component of Sombrero, and you can look at it and go, what will this mean, in today's market? It could mean $10 a share, $15 a share. If these signals of Barrick and Newmont and everything that you're hearing is indicating higher gold prices, and we get to $1,500, $1,700 gold, it could mean probably double that in share prices. The one thing that's not happening in the last decade, and this is a real good indication of how this market's going to play out on the gold side, no one's finding big mines anymore. The last mine in the last 10 years was Amaruq, 6 million ounces of 6 grams of significance. There are gold deposits that are growing that are going to be built into mines, but 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago, there was 3-4 big mines being found a year. Those days are over. Everything now is undercover. It's going to take a lot of science to find it, and the ratio of finding things is going to go way, way against us. It's going to be really tough. But we have a great real estate at Orin to go find the big ones, so we're excited, even though it's become more difficult.
Yeah, and you guys do have the big winner, it seems, because I know that you all have had several of these companies that we were referring to a minute ago, these miners from all over the world. They're coming in signing non-disclosure agreements so that they can get a look at what you guys are doing, because this is one of the largest that's been found in quite some time. And the what you guys have uncovered there at Sombrero, which is one of 2 projects, I mean, the other being Committee Bay, how difficult is it, Ivan, to share something like the findings at Sombrero with these other companies? Or is it your goal to sell both Sombrero and Committee Bay once all the resources are confirmed?
What we've talked about here is something that is rare for any investor to experience when looking for these big deposits, whether it's Sombrero or Committee Bay. We have two flagship projects in one company. Flagship meaning a deposit potentially could be found that could create a massive multiple to the share price, right?
Yep.
What we've considered publicly about it, and we're not shy to talk about it, is we might butterfly the company. So you would get an extra share for one share for Committee Bay, one share for Sombrero in Peru. In this event, if this took place, the end goal, as I said at the beginning of our interview, is to create maximum value and sell this to the highest bidder, per se, right? And as you've touched on, a lot of NDAs being signed, confidentiality agreements being signed by these major mining companies. What we see here is a very competitive interest for high quality, world class, meaning really big potential discoveries to be made. We see that in the copper gold property in Sombrero. We also see that in the gold real estate we have with Committee Bay. So, going forward, owning a share today might turn into two shares, and you might have double the opportunity for the price of one. And it'd be managed by us on both sides by this world class technical team. And there's really good probability in Sombrero because copper is much more predictable than gold. But at Committee Bay, we spent 4 years. We spent over $54 million, learning the science of that gold belt, how to target through the thin layer of cover that's covering all the rocks that are somewhat hidden. And last year, we got to the edge of discovery. And, what's worse than for our junior resource company, besides, if you could find the mine, you find it, you get paid. But the worst thing you could possibly do is get close. And it's bad because the share price gets hurt. It did last summer. But the good part, and no one's talking about this yet, and I promise you they will soon, is that getting close means you're almost there. And 4 years of getting close is finally almost there. And so, our confidence level is the highest it's ever been. I think the largest individual insider purchase the other day by insiders at $1 million in one transaction of shares is a very good indication of how confident we are of what we're dealing with going forward. And, I'd look for a really big return on either one or both of these major flagship projects for your shares going forward.
I would agree. I think that you guys are setting on something quite special, and it's really the size and the magnitude is really unheard of in today's environment. It's just incredible. And one of the more interesting aspects to me, anyway, Ivan, about what you guys are doing is you've introduced artificial intelligence. And I know that, or you had mentioned before we started recording that a couple other companies had attempted it. I personally have not heard anything about it. And so, what is going on with how do you incorporate AI into mining, and what's it doing for these projects?
Sure. So artificial intelligence, it's the future for everything. And everybody listening to this is experiencing it on a daily basis. If we talk about Nike runners, we're going to get a text message, an email, or you're going to see it on advertisements on your phone or websites you search because we've said it out loud in front of our devices, right?
Right.
That's the consumer AI platform. And what this group has done that we're working with, Compu Geoscience is the name, they've just taken the geology side of the business, the geoscientific side, and they've incorporated it into the AI platform. And they took all the data from the project, and that's what their source is. And the outcome is targets. So you think about that and you say, okay, what does that really mean? Well, we're using the same computer or engine, but we call it an engine. It's a computer that Google or Netflix or any of these consumer AI platforms would use, because that is the most powerful engine to use for a starter. Secondly, when you collect data, real simple, you collect data, you put it into a computer, the quality of the data you collect is going to control the output, right?
Right.
So we have $54 million of data. We've taken 400,000 samples on a 300-kilometer long gold belt. We have done things geologically, and I'm not going to get scientific, but we studied structures, the big way the rocks have shaped, the way they came together, what the rocks mean, with some of the world's best experts as inputs. When we took a sample, a little soil sample off the surface, you'd need a 3-day training course and a testing period before you were allowed to go take samples for us. You'd have to weigh the sample. You'd have to take a picture of the sample and GPS locate where you took it. Nobody goes to that detail in the exploration business. Very few people, major mining companies, I'm sure, but nobody in the junior world. So you take that abundance of data, and the quality, I'd argue, is a 10 out of 10. You put that into a computer with the geoscientists' interpretations of that data, and there's also some previous drilling data, so you can proof test it all, and you get it to give you some targets. And what it did for us last year, and you'll see a video on it that'll be probably published within a week to 10 days as we're doing this interview of
Okay.
how it exactly works. Yeah. It gave us, we had 2 targets that were both on the edge of what we thought could be substantial major deposits or mines being discovered at Committee Bay. It complemented those without knowing all of our data about those targets. It pointed us right to where we were being pointed to. So it independently gave us an unbiased perspective that, hey, you're onto this. It's going to be right in front of where you were going, which is a substantial check mark. But it gave us 9 other targets nearby that we would have never considered. Some are underneath 5 foot deep, shallow or 5-foot shallow lakes, glacial lakes that you can drill underneath in the winter season, no problem. And you can mine there too if you find it. But we would never send geologists to go 5 feet underwater to go take samples to see if there's a gold deposit there. And what the AI platform did is said, hey, look, there's a big structure coming through here. There's gold over here. There's gold over there. It says you should be drilling right here. So it's taking us to places we'd probably get to in 10 or 20 years. It's taking us there now. And when we go drill these AI targets for Committee Bay, there's 2 things to keep in mind. There's probably around 30 or 40 targets that are really substantial along the 300-kilometer gold belt, number one. So there could be a lot of deposits. Each target that we look at is a potential to find something similar to the mines next door, which are 5 to 10 million ounce mines that are being found in this part of the world. That's the characteristics of what we hope to find based on other mines being found in this area. And number 3, if the AI platform complement works to the work we've done to date, we would go down in history as the first company ever to successfully find a plus 5 million ounce world-class gold deposit with computer learning, the AI platform. The key that would be unlocked for the system and for the 300-kilometer, which is 220 miles, a property of potential gold deposits would just be absolutely outstanding. So truly a spectacular thing. I would encourage you to look at 2 videos, one on our homepage, which talks about Sombrero, our geologist or head geologist formerly with Newmont. He eloquently goes through a 15-minute presentation showing you why it's such a big opportunity and why it compares so well to the big Las Bambas deposit not too far away. And then secondly, we'll have this new video out on the AI learning probably by April 10th. There'll be a press release that we'll put out when that's the case.
Okay.
And I want everybody to have a watch of that video and to see how sensical and how logical it is that it can work. And even the best guys on our scientific team were critics at first, but now they've all drawn a really comfortable understanding because it's a very, very, very high level of logic that goes with a lot of really good quality data into a computer that all it's doing is a much more complex iteration of data. So imagine you get a 3D image versus an image on a piece of paper. A 3D image is much better. Well, imagine getting a 1000D image, and that's basically what the AI lets you get. So you get a lot more information to base your thing of. And lastly, there's a deposit on our Committee Bay belt. It's about 1.3 million ounces of about 8 grams per ton, which is a great start to a major deposit, a high-grade deposit. We took 1/3 of that deposit at random. We gave it to the AI platform, and we challenged it to find the other 2/3. And we got it to train so that it could find it at a 99% accuracy. So we know it works, and that's what we're working with, the proven concept, on the computer level. And the first ever drill holes will go into test it next program we go and do at Committee Bay, which should be soon.
Wow, I can't wait to see this new video, and I'll put a link to the video on your homepage in the description box below the interview here. And Ivan, that sounds, you must just be bouncing off the ceiling all the time with everything that you guys have going on, because it just sounds like you guys are just really hitting on all cylinders and making everything just happen in a way that other people are not. I mean, you guys have the AI. You're bringing in the capital that is necessary, and you're turning down capital because you want to keep things straight and controlled in the way that you want it done. And then you have the the ability to find these incredible, massive mines that other people are overlooking. I mean, kudos to you. Like I said, I started out, I said, it's a great honor to speak with you. Now you know why. I mean, it really is. I mean that sincerely. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you. And I really hope that we can speak with you again as this project begins to unfold and the drilling really commences. And we've been speaking with the executive chairman and director of Orin Resources, Ivan Bebek, and you can find out everything that you need to know over at orinresources.com. Link is in the description box below, and they're listed on the TSX and the New York Stock Exchange American under the symbols AUG. And Ivan, what a pleasure this has been. I really appreciate all your time today.
Thank you so much for having me at this really exciting time for us. It was a great pleasure being here.
Well, thank you so much, and we will talk with you soon.
Thank you.